Hello and welcome to today's webinar. We're happy you could join us for an exclusive sneak peek of our new Brookes resources. My name is Naya Hyde, and I am the marketing assistant for K-12 education products here at Brookes Publishing. Before we start, I'd just like to go over a few housekeeping items. You'll be muted for the webinar, but if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in to the question box. Due to time limitations, we may not get to address questions live, but we will allow follow-up individually via email after the webinar. For the presentation, you might want to minimize the GoToWebinar bar on your monitor so you can see more of your screen. You can do that by clicking the orange button with the arrow in the top corner of the control bar. If you need to enlarge the bar again to ask a question, you can just click the orange button again. If you experience any audio issues at any point, you can switch the phone by clicking in the audio section of the webinar panel and using the dial-in information provided. Without further delay, I am happy to introduce today's presenters and two of my favorite Brookes colleagues, Marketing Manager Brianna Humphreys and Senior Acquisitions Editor Sharon Larkin.
All right, thanks, Naya. As Naya mentioned, my name is Brianna Humphreys, and I'm a marketing manager here at Brookes. And today, Sharon and I are so excited to talk about what is new and what's coming soon. So today we're going to be talking about, what new products have released since CEC last year, if you saw us at the booth. And then we'll also be kind of highlighting some things that are coming down the line later this year. We'll also talk a little bit about our CEC virtual bookstore for those of you who are attending from CEC. And we'll also talk about some free resources you can take advantage of from Brookes. And if you stay on until the very end of the presentation, we'll also be giving away a $100 Brookes voucher for one lucky winner. So stick with us. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so as I mentioned, we've had a lot of great new resources that have published since CEC last year. If you take a quick look, you'll see just kind of a brief little sampling of what we'll be talking about today. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Sharon so we can get started talking about our first book.
Wonderful. Thanks, Brianna. So jumping right in, the first title that we want to highlight this evening is Supporting Students and Staff After COVID-19, Your Trauma-Sensitive Back-to-School Transition Plan. This book was written by trauma expert Jen Alexander, or Miss Jen, as she is known by her followers. Some of you may already be familiar with her. She's also the best-selling author of another Brookes book, Building Trauma-Sensitive Schools, Your Guide to Creating Safe, Supportive Learning Environments for All Students. So this new book published at the end of August, and it really provides elementary schools with practical, reader-friendly guidance on how to design and implement a trauma-sensitive transition plan for back to school, for getting back to school. Excuse me, and we published this as an e-only resource, an ebook-only resource, so that schools could really get it in their hands instantly. And it really is a blueprint for making that return to school as smooth as possible. So some of the key topics that are covered in this book include teaching schools how to apply the 4 essentials of trauma-sensitive schools to their transition plan, facilitate team discussions and professional development sessions, gather critical input from families, address specific challenges of school reopenings, notice and meet the needs of staff, students, and their families, and helping students develop social emotional skills to navigate the transition back to school. So this resource includes a lot of practical resources and information. And here on the next slide, I'd like to say that this book is small but mighty, because it is really packed full of those resources and online materials. So in addition to the activities and games and social emotional lessons that are included in the book, you also get more than 50 downloadable resources, including journal pages, handouts, activities, planning forms, posters, and even professional development PowerPoint slides, which is something that I really love about this. So it's priced at $9.95, and it really is a tremendous resource for schools. On this next slide, we kind of just give you an example of what those online materials and handouts and things look like. So our marketing team and Miss Jen have really worked closely together to develop a lot of wonderful and some free resources related to trauma-informed schools and trauma-informed care. One of those resources that I'm going to show you on the next slide is a new video that we have posted with Miss Jen, where she shares some tips and things that educators and schools should keep in mind as they return to face-to-face learning. So to access that, just go to the URL there on your screen. And while you're at that webpage, you can also find out more about Miss Jen and more about her books and some of the resources that we have available online. So I'll turn it over to Brianna, who's going to talk about our next book.
Great, thanks, Sharon. Yeah, so our next book is called The Reset Process, Trauma-Informed Behavior Strategies. This published back in October of 2020. It's developed by 2 seasoned educators who specialize in trauma-informed teaching. It's a neuroscience-based approach that's designed to improve behavioral success in children from grades K to 8. So the process itself consists of 4 steps. The first is move your body. The second is modulate down, activate thinking, and then make a plan. So it's structured, but it's flexible enough that you can really easily implement it in any classroom or an entire school system. It's been refined through nearly a decade of field testing, and it blends the best practices from behavioral approaches, mindfulness practices, and trauma-informed care. So in addition to addressing behavior, it also guides schools in meeting the neurological and attachment needs of dysregulated students. Overall, this is a great resource for teachers, school counselors, administrators, and other professional support personnel. So on this next slide, we talk a little bit about the practical materials. So in addition to the book itself, you also get this great package of online resources to really help you implement the reset process to fidelity. So some of these online resources include planning forms, templates, activity sheets, and there's also a really great book study guide that's perfect for individual teachers who are implementing this process as well as groups. So if your entire school is deciding to adopt the reset process, you can use this as part of your professional development. It comes with the book, so it's really easy to get started. On this next slide, we talk a little bit, or we're showing examples of some of these materials. So if you want to learn more about the reset process, and this is true of all of our books that we'll be talking about today that are currently out, you can visit brookespublishing.com to read an excerpt. There's usually a chapter posted for free. And then also in this slide, you'll see an example of that book study guide I mentioned, and also one of those sample forms. So all in all, another great resource to support students during this challenging time. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Sharon to talk about our next book.
I feel like a newscaster. So the next book we have is the second edition of one of our all-time best-selling inclusion books, the Paraprofessional Handbook for Effective Support in Inclusive Classrooms. Now for this second edition, lead author and inclusion expert Julie Costin brought in Kate McLeod as a new co-author for this edition. Kate McLeod is an assistant professor of special education at the University of Maine, Farmington, and she's also a charter member of the Maine Coalition for Inclusive Education. Just a little quick side note before I tell you more about the book. Julie and Kate co-founded Inclusive Schooling, and Inclusive Schooling offers courses and workshops and presentations and support, all focused around creating more inclusive schools. They have a ton of resources for admins, educators, and paras, and they're super active on social media. They are always doing something fun on social media. So you can check them out at inclusiveschooling.com. I just wanted to mention that. It's a fantastic resource. They have lots of great info. But back to the second edition. The second edition of the Paraprofessionals Handbook is a supremely practical guide on surviving and thriving as a paraprofessional. It includes new and updated research, practices, resources, examples, tons of stuff. And the chapters provide information on collaborating with team members, selecting accommodations and modifications, facilitating peer connections, fading supports, and behavior supports. There's also a new chapter in the second edition on respectful support for developing student independence. So the full TOC can be found, along with an excerpt, as Brianna said, can be found at brookspublishing.com. And then this next slide, we show, in this new edition, we have lots of practical materials, including activities and lesson learning checks, reproducible templates, frequently asked questions, to-do lists, journal articles. There's a lot of stuff. But this really is an essential hands-on guide for both new and seasoned paraprofessionals. One thing that I want to mention, and this next slide, we kind of have a couple of pages that outline the interior of the book. So for this new edition, we kind of did a complete refresh of the layout and the look and feel and even the format. So we bumped up the trim size to 8.5 by 11, and it's full of these fun and engaging illustrations. In addition to that, with the larger trim size, there is now space for readers to take notes and complete worksheets right in the book. So the authors know firsthand, Julie and Kate, they know firsthand that getting training and professional development resources for paraprofessionals, it can be challenging and it can be something that schools really struggle with. But it's definitely something that's needed in the field. And to help with that, they created a facilitator's guide as a companion to the second edition. It's important to note that this facilitator's guide is a separate product and it's sold as an ebook only. But the guide includes everything that a professional development facilitator, a trainer, or even a special education teacher would need to conduct 6 one-hour live or virtual training sessions. Facilitators and participants in the training will need to have a copy of the second edition in order to use it or participate. And it can be given to groups of all sizes. It can even be used as onboard training for new paraprofessionals as well. So altogether, there are 6 training sessions, and each one aligns with 1 or more chapters from the book. So the goal here is really to kind of do a read along or a read through and really deepen the paraprofessionals' understanding of the key topics covered in the book. So the book itself, or the product itself, includes a manual, 6 PowerPoint presentation slides. In each of those PowerPoint presentations, there's a video introduction from the authors, and they just kind of go over the agenda and what they're excited about for this session. There are also email templates for you to communicate with your attendees and schedule the actual sessions. And then finally, there's an editable certificate of attendance that you can fill out for everyone who completes the training. So if you're interested in learning more, you can go to the website there on your screen. It's going to publish later this month, and we're really excited to have it come out. So back to you, Brianna.
Thanks, Sharon. Yeah, this is a really exciting resource. It's really going to make a lot of people's lives easier when it comes to training. So anyway, now we're going to talk a little bit about a teacher's guide to progress monitoring. This is a brand new resource that came out last summer by Jennifer Madabi. And as kind of, the background as to what started this book, there are a lot of new federal mandates that require schools to ensure that students are making progress. And it's more important than ever to make sure that teachers are prepared and able to collect data regularly and make instructional decisions to help ensure students are meeting these goals. So this guide is really the key to introducing progress monitoring, making sure you're complying with these mandates, and how to adjust your current teaching instruction to make sure you're helping every learner achieve. So when you get into the nitty-gritty of the book itself, it really begins with an introduction to the fundamentals of progress monitoring. It talks about how it's important, how it can be used in academic, behavioral, and functional settings, how it can support your teaching and assessment through task analysis. And then it kind of segues into more real-world guidance for how to implement every step in the process, from collecting data efficiently to making informed decisions about your instruction. So one of the great features within this book is there are 5 chapter-long case studies that really help bring progress monitoring to life. On the next slide, you'll see some examples of one of those case studies, but in addition, this book also has end of chapter exercises, visual examples throughout, and a handful of forms to make sure you're implementing this to fidelity. So as I mentioned, here are some kind of screenshots here. You can get a sense of, at the beginning of each chapter, there are these really handy learning goals. I'm pointing to them, but you can't see my finger. But yeah, no, they're great to kind of help orient you to the material before you dive in. The second screenshot really shows a case study, and it goes and looks at, one student example, and there's a handful of them to show different cases. And then this third screenshot is just an example of a task analysis recording chart that's included as part of those online materials that come with the book. So all in all, a really great new resource, and we're excited to have it on our list.
Great. So the next book is a new edition on our list. It is Design and Deliver. It's a second edition of Design and Deliver by Louis Lord Nelson, who is an internationally recognized UDL expert. So this book gives K-12 teachers a reader-friendly UDL introduction and a practical framework for implementation with guidelines and checkpoints for designing effective, barrier-free lesson plans and learning environments. Readers will learn how to use the 3 core principles of UDL to present information in multiple ways to ensure access for all learners. So the second edition has been thoroughly updated to reflect new research and developments in the field of UDL. And this book provides an essential UDL introduction to both pre-service and in-service educators. So the new edition includes useful stories, practical tips from teachers implementing UDL, technology bites, which are these timely tips and ideas on how to enhance online learning with UDL, expert guidance on current topics, including culturally responsive teaching and urban education. There are some ponder this prompts throughout the book to help readers consider new ideas and additional resources. And then we have some end of chapter check-ins that will help readers really apply what they've learned. So, like a lot of our materials, it's full of really practical materials that include detailed examples, stories, illustrations, teacher reflections, and activities. There are also some online resources that include CAST UDL guidelines, several different charts and graphics, as well as a UDL lesson plan flowchart. So this book published last month, and if you'd like additional information on it, you can find it at brookspublishing.com. And then the next one that we want to talk about, it's not a new book. The second edition of Unstuck and Untarget has been out for a couple years now, but we have optimized the kit or the product itself. And we did that so that it can now be used for in-person and virtual instruction. So it's still the same content from the second edition. We've just reformatted and optimized some of the materials. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Unstuck and Untarget, it's an executive function curriculum, and it's used to help students who struggle with executive function challenges or problems with flexibility, planning, and organization. It's used with students who are ages 8 to 11, and it's ideal for learners with autism, ADHD, or other challenges that would affect their executive function. So the practical resources include 21 ready-to-use field-tested lessons. And now we have an optimized curriculum that includes both printed and downloadable materials. So we have a printed manual, and then we have kind of this downloadable components that include 2 digital game boards, 4 digital print-ready posters, and 50 handouts. The 50 handouts are all now fillable PDFs, making it really easy for that virtual environment. The previous edition included printed game boards and posters and did not include the PDFs. Now, if you're a customer who purchased the previous kind of configuration of the second edition, the good news is that you already have access to these new digital materials. Just follow the download instructions that are in the front of your book, and you'll be able to access them. They're there waiting for you. And if anybody has questions about this, or you want to learn more about Unstuck and Untarget, you can visit brookspublishing.com. So Brianna, I think you're about ready to kick off the little sneak peek segment we have.
I am, yes. So this is really exciting stuff. Some of these titles you might have seen us talking about, but most of them you probably haven't. Some of these are so new we don't even have covers yet. So this is hot off the presses, in the works.
Hot off the press.
So stay tuned, and without further ado, we're going to jump right in to our first book here. So as many of you might be familiar with, the Grieving Student is a really helpful and popular resource by author David Schoenfeld, who's a renowned expert on child bereavement and school crisis, and Marcia Quackenbush. So they are in the process of, well, we're in the process of publishing a brand new second edition of this popular resource. So this will be coming out in May. Like the first edition, it's going to provide readers with the practical guidance they need to provide sensitive support to students of all ages and their families who are dealing with grief. So drawing on both empirical research and extensive professional experience, they've really enhanced this edition with up-to-date information on grief, especially in the context of school crisis and trauma, suicide loss, social media, and some other new and timely topics. They've also revised this edition to expand the focus so that it's more broad and can be applicable to all school personnel, from administrators to support staff. So it's really a resource that an entire school system can use to help support the students within the school itself. So readers in this book will get plenty of real world tips, strategies, vignettes, and activities to help them skillfully support the students as they're coping with grief, and it'll help them work their way back into full participation in academic and social life. So this edition is currently available for pre-order at brookspublishing.com. We're really looking forward to have it on our list, and it'll be especially important to reference as we're transitioning to back to school settings and dealing with so much loss that students have suffered during the course of the pandemic.
Absolutely. And I just want to add, Brianna, there's also a really cool study guide included as a download with this book. And that study guide, it's a great resource that schools can use in their own in-service trainings. And it kind of works you through some of the topics in the book. And there are also some PowerPoints that go along with that. That they can use during those in-service or professional development sessions. So it's a great resource.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sharon. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. Okay, so keeping with today's theme of new editions, I'm pleased to tell you about a new second edition for systematic instruction for students with moderate and severe disabilities that is going to publish this fall. And it's written by seasoned special educator Belva Collins, who has decades of experience training teachers. So this textbook provides readers with a comprehensive guidance on the why and how of systematic instruction, which is a highly effective and evidence-based teaching approach rooted in applied behavior analysis. This book can be used as a standalone text for graduate or undergraduate teaching methods courses. It can also be used as a practical guide for in-service special educators. The second edition will feature an updated TOC, fully revised chapters, new information and sample lessons throughout, information on inclusion and culturally responsive practices, new information on working with parents and family members. Throughout each chapter, it'll have information on adapting systematic instruction methods in distance learning. There's going to be a new chapter on instructional decisions and exercising leadership, 14 detailed sample lesson plans. And also, this new edition, I'm happy to announce, will have faculty materials. So we'll be including test banks and PowerPoints along with it. So really excited for this one to publish and look for it later this year.
Okay, so this is one of those titles where we're so early, we don't even have a cover yet, but we are so excited that we couldn't wait to tell you about it. So a new title that we have on our list is The Reimagined School. It's by inclusion experts Jenna Rufo and Julie Costin. So we mentioned Julie a little bit earlier today in her company, Inclusive Schooling, and Jenna has teamed up with Dr. Costin, I'm sorry, for this brand new book. So kind of sparked by the inequities that have become increasingly apparent during the COVID-19 pandemic, this book is designed to help prompt leaders to pause their current thinking and consider what a reimagined school might look like. So some of the questions that'll be addressed within the book include, which established routines that have been working in schools was it really working for all students? What hasn't worked so well? And what would it look like to rethink school in a way that eliminates practices that keep some students struggling while others thrive? So it's a really great resource that administrators will need to get their hands on. It's a new way of thinking and considering how you can build equity and inclusion and a culture of belonging overall within school systems. So as I said, we're still pretty early out with this book, but if you want to sign up for alerts to learn more information as it becomes available, you can just check out the URL that's on this slide. So it's bpub.fyi/the reimagined school, and you'll get email alerts as new information becomes available. So definitely keep an eye out for this one.
So another one that's so new we don't have a cover yet, but I am beyond excited to talk a little bit about this next book, Unsilenced. As I talk about it, I need to remember not to give away too much, because as a memoir, that would be bad. I don't want to ruin it for our future readers, but this is an unbelievable story. So author Howard Shane is very well known as an expert and clinician in AAC, and his career in working with people with significant disabilities has spanned over 50 years. But what people don't know is that he stumbled into this career by accident. And when he graduated from college in his early 20s, his goal was to be a history teacher. He had never had any experience or training in working with people with disabilities. And right out of college in 1969, out of his undergrad, he lands his first teaching job at the Belchertown State School. He was hired over the phone. He had no idea what he was walking into. And Belchertown was a bleak institution where people with disabilities were basically warehoused and where they endured horrific abuse and neglect. But this isn't a memoir about the conditions at Belchertown. That's been well documented in several other books. Even though he was stunned by the conditions at Belchertown and the challenges that he faced in his new job, as he got to know his diverse and endearing and intelligent students, he became consumed with not only helping them, but finding ways to help them communicate better. That's all I'm going to tell you. Other than, I cannot recommend this book enough. You will laugh, you will cry. It is truly an incredibly moving story. So Unsilenced will publish later this year, but we do have an exclusive sneak peek. This was actually just uploaded to the website today. If you would like, we have posted an audio excerpt of the introduction, or from the introduction, that you can listen to, and it's read by author Howard Shane. Just visit the URL there on your screen, and in addition, you can also sign up for alerts and stay up to date on the book's release. So good. Handing it back over to you, Brianna.
Thanks, Sharon. Yeah, so lots to look forward to this year. I do want to just set up a quick reminder that for those who are still with us, stay tuned, because we are going to do our giveaway very soon. So hang in there with me a little bit longer. For all of our CEC attendees who are joining us on this webinar, be sure to stop by our virtual bookstore. We've set up a special webpage just for you with a tailored list of our books, including some of the ones we've talked about today. And when you visit our bookstore, you'll get access to a special discount code that you can use on any future orders to save 20%. So be sure to check it out. Also, as I mentioned earlier in today's presentation, there are a number of free resources that Brookes has available to help you stay up to date with the latest from our expert authors. So to make that super easy, we have packaged all of this together in one brief special education resource guide. So it includes 6 different ways to get practical tips and takeaways from our expert authors. It is available in the handouts pane. It is also available within the Brookes booth in Hoover. If you are a CEC attendee, so you can get it that way. And if you still can't find it, send me an email and I'll be happy to get it to you. So this has a great list of resources from everything from our Brookes blog, which is updated weekly, our free monthly newsletter that has practical tips and takeaways that we send directly to your inbox, as well as our ongoing coffee chat series that we've been hosting with our expert authors. So definitely check this out, and we want to connect with you. So be sure to take a look. So as I've mentioned, it is now time for our giveaway. So
All right.
we will be selecting one lucky winner from today's attendee to receive a $100 Brookes voucher. So stay tuned. We'll email the lucky winner after today's presentation, and we'll be in touch shortly. So thanks for sticking around, and we'll be reaching out to you shortly. But even if you don't win, if you're a CEC attendee, you still have a chance to win another prize. We are raffling off a library of books. It includes 15 titles and it's worth more than $500. So be sure to enter and you can win this excellent library. You might even spot a couple of the books that we were talking about today. So it includes latest resources and bestsellers, and it's really a great way to keep up to date with everything from Brookes. Alrighty, so if you have questions about any of the books that we talked about today or anything else, you can feel free to shoot us an email. They're listed on the slides. If you're at CEC, be sure to send me a direct message in Whova and I'll get back to you. So there are a couple different ways you can reach out, and I'll be sure to connect with you soon. So I guess that's it.
That's all.
Yeah, from all of us at Brookes Publishing, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you learned a lot about these new resources and things that are coming soon. Make sure you check out our bookstore, sign up for alerts, get out on our list, and that way we can stay in touch, and we look forward to connecting with you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy CEC.
Have a good night.
Good night.